So good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you here to Gov School. My name is Mark Knowles. I'm one of the founders of Gov Directions, and we're happy to host this series. And we, of course, have with us Professor Chris Hanks, who's online here. And we'll turn it over to him. Just as a reminder, we've been going through a series of sessions. This past week, we heard from Danielle Miller. I believe Danielle's going to jump online here at some point, and maybe she can share with us some of her comments that she had talked to us about. We talked about teaming and certifications, and that was a follow-up to branding, communication, and capabilities, which are both of those recordings are on our Gov School page, and you just click through and watch those catch up. This coming Monday, we're going to do a maximizing your use of Gov Directions class, which is going to basically our Gov School focus. And we're going to go into some of the details of government contract, and I'm going to lead that. This session is going to be probably about 2 hours long. It's something we traditionally do for newer members, but we want to have it available in this session here, walking you through all the areas that you need to be aware of in government contracting. And so with that said, what I wanted to do is welcome Chris Hanks today, and we'll turn it over to him. How are you doing today, Chris? Your mute's still on.
Okay, there we go. Got it. All right. I am doing well, and thanks for the invitation. So I appreciate it. Sometimes it's not the things, it's not how many sessions we attend. It's not all the words that people say to us. It's the words that get through to us that are sort of allow for our growth and our transformation. And so I say all that because I'm going to ask a very, I would love to know what stayed with you from the last session. Because I know you had a guest speaker and talked about teaming and that kind of thing, or any of the previous sessions. I didn't know if there was one thing that stayed with you, because that's really important to reflect upon so that it stays with us. And it doesn't become that one time, it's like, hey, yeah, no, I remember hearing that somewhere, somehow, versus, hey, this is the thing that I took away, and I'm going to apply it, and it's going to allow my life to change somewhat. So does anybody have that thing that's going to stay with them, that what Danielle might have talked about or anything like that? Okay, well then I guess I'll move on. And I know that's uncomfortable for some people. And I know these are the kinds of things where we just, put it on mute, we multitask our way through these kinds of things. And I totally get that, because sometimes I do the same thing. But I did want to at least allow for that opportunity to sort of like, okay, here's what I'm going to hold on to. Here's what I'm going to remember. And I know it's a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, but that's how we grow. We grow through that discomfort. Because, growth is this really beautifully hard thing. It's a really, really hard thing that we're all struggling with, and it's a hard choice, but so is staying where you are, right? I mean, some people think the easy way is the choice because it's less resistant and it feels easy at the moment, but long term, that's the hard choice, right? Mastering a skill and becoming the best at what you do is a really hard thing, but so is being mediocre. So is being average. That's a hard choice as well. So I think either way is hard. It's just kind of like choose your hard. What is the thing that we're going to do? Because for me, I've been struggling with exercising, and I just want to eat what I want to eat. And exercising is a hard choice, but so is not exercising, and the results that I get from that. So anyway. So we're all on this call to grow, and we're all sort of trying to change and strip years off of our learning curve from learning about learning and leaning on from each other, because Gov Directions, there's no place you can go and get more information about how to do business with the government and what to do and all the nuances. That's So I don't necessarily have to invest the same amount of time and energy and effort that they did. I can just kind of copy the best practices from them. I run the Institute for Entrepreneurship. So there's no place you'll go that has more information about entrepreneurship than we do. So you can strip years off your learning curve and just kind of copy some of the best practices from some of the best people. So I guess I'll stay with the theme then, since I'm not going to get the participation that I was hoping to make this more specific and more, as they say, the more specific, the more terrific. Talk more in general with this theme of growth.
Hey, Chris, there are some comments in the comment box.
Oh, are there? You know what? I'm not even seeing those because I'm just too busy talking at a computer screen. So
that's okay. They're saying that somebody said hard thinking beats hard work. That's one of the comments. So I just call
that is so true. No, thank you, Paula. And I won't pick on you because I picked on you last time, I think. So yeah, and it's like you get punished for participating, which is never fair at all.
I just don't want to hog the mic, so yeah. It's okay.
Yes, but hard thinking does beat hard work, right? It really does. It's offensive in a way to say, you know what, if you just work hard, you're going to be successful. I know hardworking poor people. That's not fair to say that. It is like, look, and a question I think as business owners, we should ask ourselves periodically is, am I just busier or am I getting better? Like, am I getting busier or am I getting better? Because sometimes it's easy to confuse the two, right? I'm hustling, I'm doing all these things. I work 12 hours. It's like, yeah, you did. You spent 12 hours away from the house, but did that mean you were getting better, the business is getting better, your team is getting better, your opportunities are getting better? Or are you just busier? And that's not always an easy thing. Because here's what I also know about entrepreneurship. You can wing a startup. And maybe a few of you are there where you're winging it, you're just kind of figuring it out. You're becoming an entrepreneur and just kind of winging things. And you can do that. You can wing a startup. You can't wing sustainable growth. That's where we really have to start applying and becoming better. You could stay small and start up and do all things yourself and just kind of, but if I'm going to grow an organization, then I have to sort of, I have to stop winging it and I have to sort of learn how to do that better. What makes growth so incredibly hard? I find it really fascinating in a way that it's never been easier in the history of the world to do what we do. It's never been easier. So why is it so hard? It's still incredibly difficult, but it's never been easier. Like, it's never been easier to start a business, to grow a business, to find resources, to find experts, to access teams through LinkedIn, to access capital through things like Kickstarter and all the other creative ways that didn't exist 10 years or 20 years before. I mean, in all of these ways, Gov Directions didn't exist, 30 years ago. So all of these ways that helps us do business better, yet it's still incredibly hard. And I find that kind of fascinating, especially when I think about my journey as an entrepreneur. When I first started, it is easier now, but in some ways it's harder now than ever before too. And I find that kind of fascinating, like that there's just no way to get through the hard work of growth. And I think, and I don't know, I mean, this is something that I could probably spend too much time on, but I think part of the reason it is so hard is that it only occurs outside of my comfort zone. That's the only time, that's the only place that growth occurs. Hey, I've never done this before, and this feels awkward to me. This feels different. I don't know how to do this because I've never done this before, or I've done it only a few times and I've never done it really well and I haven't mastered it. And yeah, that's true, right? That's a true statement about growth. It always occurs outside of my comfort zone, because if I was comfortable with it and it was inside my comfort zone, then I'm not really growing. I'm not stretching. And so I think that's one of the reasons that makes it so hard. I mean, I think that it's a lot of other reasons, but it still doesn't erase the fact that it's really, really hard. So that's another reason why I love opportunities to get in front of people or be with people who are all doing the hard thing and saying, you know what, I'm not going to choose mediocrity. I'm going to choose to do something that matters, do something that's different, and to push myself and stretch myself in ways that I never thought possible. And then seeing where it grows. Another thing that I think is hard about growth is it's not a formula. I mean, there are formulas. Like there's a formula I could give you for calculating your sustainable growth rate, which is, there's the academic definition, but the way I would define it is it's kind of like your speed limit for your business. The speed limit says you can only drive 50 miles an hour, but I can choose to go faster as long as I understand the risk. You know, I'm not saying stay at 50, you know, but there's a way, because growth always sucks cash, and a lot of times you grow and you outstrip your cash, and so there's a dangerous growth. But there's also that Mario Andretti quote that I would like. You know, if you're always feeling in control, then you're not going fast enough. And so, you know, maybe I want to go a little fast, and things are going a little bit feel a little bit different and strange. But how fast is too fast? That's sustainable growth rate. So there are formulas that we could talk about and that I could give you, but growth itself is not a formula. There are best practices I can copy, I can paste, I can say, look, what did my competitors do? What did other successful people do? But it's not a formula. It's an adventure. And so I think that's a healthier way to view it, because adventures are supposed to be unpredictable. And you know, if I was reading an adventure story, I'm going to see some times where the main character gets knocked on his back, and then other times where things looked like they would never get out of that, you know, difficult situation. And then there are great times too. And I think that's true for all of us. And I think that that's what makes it fascinating. It's an adventure, and it should be. Adventures are unpredictable to a certain extent. And I think that that's kind of fun, because I know we want things to be certain, and we feel more comfortable when they're predictable and certain, you know, but we become more alive when things are not, you know, and all of growth demands a temporary release of security. Hey, I'm secure in my comfort zone, and I'm secure in the predictable routine. I know, but now you're going to do something different. And we become more alive then. Who wants to watch a sporting event where we know the outcome? You know, the uncertainty is what makes it fun. That's what makes it art. You know, art, I could, you know, hey, I painted this picture. Do you like it? Art is inherently risky, right? And so, like, you may not like it, but you may like it. It may touch you, it may not touch you. That's art. And I think what business owners do is a form of art, because you have something in your head and you're putting it out in the world, and you care enough about what you do to touch somebody, to move somebody, to make an emotional connection beyond the transaction. That's art. To change people, change how they view, change how they feel, change how they think. That's art. And so I like that. I like the idea, viewing growth as an art, business as an art. I have been described, and one of the reasons that got me into this academia thing is I was invited to come to colleges and guest speak, because I was a serial entrepreneur. That led to me becoming, you know, falling in love with teaching entrepreneurship. And so I started doing that. And I would be invited in and introduced as a serial entrepreneur, which I never really liked, because there's only one other word you put after serial, for, you know, and that's usually murderer or killer. You don't really talk about a serial artist. Like you love to paint, you're a serial painter, or you love to write music, you're a serial musician. No, you just are a musician. You just are a painter. You are an artist. And so the idea that there's something wrong with somebody who inherently likes to grow things and use the, you know, start businesses and scale businesses, I always thought that was a little bit strange. But art, Artists do what is required, or sorry, artists, like employees do what's required. Artists do what's possible, right? What is possible, not what's required. What's required, and sometimes that's a helpful question, what's required for me to make X amount of dollars this month so I can support my family? That's a very, very good question. And sometimes a necessary question versus I have a business, what's possible? What's possible is a better question than what's required. And I kind of like that, you know, the fact that I get to do something and grow something, and there's really no limits other than my beliefs, which I think my limited beliefs hold me back. You know, I have very few limits, and most of those limits that I have in my business are self-imposed. They're limits I place upon myself, and I find that kind of sad that we are limited by that. In fact, there's this one definition that I really like that a lot that says, you know, it's a quote that I read in a book that basically just said, the definition of hell is God showing us who we could have been had we just trusted. And to remove those limiting beliefs and say, look, I'm going to do something that matters. I am going to scale something that matters. I kind of like that. And I guess I'll close off. I could probably riff off this art thing for a while, but I'll close it off. But Andy Warhol, I thought had an interesting quote. Andy Warhol once said, being good at business is the best art. And so I always found that somewhat humorous and somewhat cool. But that's one of the reasons I think growth feels risky, because it's art. It feels risky because I'm leaving a comfort zone. I think that there's a whole host of other reasons that growth feels risky, and it feels so it's so challenging. Here's something like a fact that may surprise many, that more businesses die of indigestion than starvation. And what I mean by that is you think that most businesses die because they don't have enough business. They weren't able to sell their product or service to a customer. That's not true statistically. Most businesses die because of indigestion. They weren't able to manage the challenges of growth, which is a really hard thing. And so that's why, again, conversations like this and partnerships like this, alliances like this, getting exposed to experts like this, and in this series, these are reasons why I think that they are super, super important. So anyway, so I know these are a lot of general comments. My goal is hopefully to change the way you think in some way, challenge the way you think in some way, and challenge the way you view your business, because that changes everything. You know, the way you think determines your results. If you think you are the luckiest person on the planet because you get to get up every day to do what you do, that's a pretty powerful belief. That's a pretty powerful thought process that I'm sure would change your results, right? If you really, really, thought that. And so sometimes I don't have to change my situation. You know, all suffering comes from trying to resist change. Or I want something to change. I don't want to accept things as they are. And so therefore I'm dissatisfied where they are. And so I'm gonna experience pain and suffering. I'm going to experience frustration because I want things to be different. I want my situation to be different. And I find it interesting that it's like, you know what, what if I just accepted the facts of the situation? Yes, I wish I had more money. Yes, I wish I was had more knowledge about this industry. Yes, I wish it was easier to do business with the government. But so what? It is. And so I'm just going to sort of accept that. And I'm going to think about it, not in terms of a burden, but a blessing. Hey, it's in a way, it's kind of cool that it's this hard. Well, why? Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll learn and grow from it. Or maybe it's keeping competitors to the sideline because they're not willing to do the things that are required, but I am. So what if I turn those things that I'm dreading, those things that I find frustration in, and what if I could think about them in a whole new way? All of a sudden, I'd have a whole new world, and I'd have a whole bunch of new results that are pretty cool to sort of look at. Which I know is an incredibly easy thing to sit here and just talk about and to apply. That's a really hard thing. And that's a whole different conversation. How do we apply that? How do we hold ourselves accountable to that? That's a hard thing. How do I keep looking forward instead of backwards? That's a hard thing. Some of us are kind of hurt by our past, so it makes our futures less or more challenging to sort of create. And it's easier to remember the past than to imagine a new future. It's much easier to say, here's what I did in the past. Cool. But what if I reinvented myself and imagined a whole new future? What would that look like? And that's a lot harder. That's why we just tend to just take small steps based upon our past versus imagining a whole new future for us. But I think forward is better than backwards. I think the future is more interesting than history, even though I love history and I'm a big history guy. But what I've done in the past is less interesting than what I'm going to do. I think responsibility looks forward. I think leaders have to look forward. I think that blame looks backward. And I think focus should always be forward. And even if I fall flat on my face in looking forward, I'm still moving forward because, you fall right on your face, you're still moving forward. So that's a good thing, right? So I think that's much more interesting. So I think that, and I'm gonna, I've attempted at these previous things to come up with these weird analogies, and I'm gonna come up with another weird one that I don't know if it's gonna land. I don't know if any of my analogies, again, when you're having a one-sided conversation, are really helpful. But when I was a young person with a long time ago, my second favorite arcade game that I would save up my quarters and sometimes play is an arcade game called Frogger. And I don't know if anybody's ever familiar with Frogger and this idea of like this little frog, but basically the idea was to keep the frog alive and get it into a house, and you had to dodge all of this traffic and logs and alligators and stuff. But the goal of Frogger, at least the way I understood Frogger, was if you stay still, you die. And I think that's true with entrepreneurship. Like Frogger, I got to keep moving. I got to keep moving until I get successful. I got to keep moving. I don't know where to go. I'm going to go left. I'm going to go right. I'm going to go forwards. I got to keep moving. I just got to keep moving. And I think that Frogger principle, if we're going to apply that as a principle, I think that there's some power to that. I don't know what to do. Well, staying still is not an option. So what are you going to do? When we don't have clarity about the future, we tend to freeze and we tend to do nothing. And I think that we could learn from Frogger and just say, no, you can't stay still because you will die. You've got to move. So I'm going to make a call. I'm going to reach out to so-and-so. I'm going to send an email to at least 5 people. I am going to, you could keep adding to the list, but the goal is I'm going to do nothing. What we tend to do sometimes is pain relief. Is to say, look, I don't know what to do, and I'm really upset, I'm really scared, and I'm getting nervous, and this is getting hard, and nobody understands what I'm going through because, something about entrepreneurship is incredibly isolating. It's incredibly isolating, and that's a whole big topic. But I question whether or not you can find a more isolating profession. It's very isolating. So you go through all that and you say, you know what, I'm just going to disappear. Maybe I'm just going to watch Netflix and binge because I don't want to deal with reality. I'd rather escape than confront what's real. And so if we could just learn that lesson from Frogger, like, look, growing is hard. It's hard. Yes, it is. But it's a necessary thing because healthy things grow. And growing things change, and change is hard. Change is super hard for all of us. If you wanted the scariest Halloween costume ever, you could just buy a t-shirt and write the word change on it. And that would be scarier than any Halloween costume I think that you could come up with, because change is hard, and we don't like it. We tend to resist it. But I think it's a much healthier and much easier to say, look, I'm going to design my own change. I'm not going to live a life of default. I'm going to live a life of design, and I'm going to write the growth that I want. I'm going to write the story of the future. That picture of the future that produces passion in me, I'm going to write it. And then I'm going to go make it happen. And the good news is, without, hopefully I won't offend you by saying this, but you're not smart enough to do it on your own. You're not good enough to do it on your own. I can't name a single, and I know a lot of smart people. That's what a think tank is. You get a bunch of smart people together, and you get the collective wisdom, the collective intelligence from the best of the best. And here's what I know: nobody's smart enough to do this on their own. Your life is too small just to do it on your own. And so the idea is like, no, I'm going to surround myself with people. There's a reason why we have other people on the planet besides just us. And I can learn from them, lean on them, and be challenged by them, and grow farther than I ever thought possible. You know that when you run with a group, you run farther than you run by yourself. That's been proven. If you walk, they did this study, I thought it was kind of interesting. People who are dealing in the hospitals with severe pain, and you tell them, say, okay, look down this hallway, and you have to walk down this hallway. And they would ask them to judge the distance of the hallway. They always judged the distance a lot less when they had somebody walking with them and being with them, right? I don't know anybody who's climbed Mount Everest by themselves. It takes others. So anyway, and for introverted people like me, that's a hard lesson, but a very, very necessary one, because you can't go it alone. I used to take pride in that, and I still sometimes do take pride in not sharing my feelings or my struggles or my challenges and all that stuff. Sometimes I take pride in that, which is kind of silly, because greatness is never about one. Greatness is about a whole bunch of others. So with that, I know I've been sort of talking at you guys for a while on some just general concepts about growth, but I guess I wanted to hold it out, or just maybe put a pause there and see what questions that you had that Mark and I can possibly answer for you.
So Chris, I'm going to echo that. Please ask your questions. Chris is here today for us. And I also will acknowledge that Danielle has joined us as well. And she's here as a resource if she's able to unmute. I always hate to just call on somebody when they're not prepared to speak, but that can happen. But, we had the session on teaming that was actually very helpful. And I know I call it teaming, but working with others. And then also the capabilities. So Mark has said, I'm just getting started with bidding on contracts. I need to find some contract work quickly. How and where can I network with people to move forward? All of us can probably chime in on that one, but it's I actually have had that question at least 3 times today from individuals we've been walking through our website, and some are needing something within like 30 to 45 days. So it's like, sometimes, have to be realistic too. So it takes a little while sometimes to make decisions. You got any answers for that one question, Chris?
Well, I don't know. I always get nervous about answering in sound bites, which I know I have to do a lot of times, and I don't like it because I don't want to sound general and I don't want to sound insensitive to people's struggles. Because when I see this, like, look, I have to find some contract work quickly. Like when I read that sentence, that makes me, that makes me think of a lot of things. Like, okay, well then, what's the problem that I can solve, and who's struggling with that problem the most? And let me just go now, because if I need contract work by this date, or else I can't pay my rent, I was like, okay, well, I got to be very clear on the problem that I solve and who's struggling with the problem the most, and I'm going to offer a better solution than we can get anywhere else. That sounds pretty simple. Those are hard things, but I would get real sort of tactical with that. Like, okay, I'm going to certainly bid the contracts and all that stuff, but I'm also going to not limit that. If I've got to move quickly, I'm not going to limit it to just state, local government. I'm going to do that to commercial, to resident, to whoever, depending on my business. I'm going to go out there. Because if I solve a problem for you, you will pay me money for that, right? If I provide more value to you than the money I'm asking, there's always going to be money exchange for that. But the question is, like, if I said, hey, hire me as a consultant, you don't see the value there. There is not inherent value in just me. I do consulting and I do it for this many years. So what? Tell me how, like, you're going to solve my problem. How much revenue are you going to create for me by this date? How much expense savings am I going to benefit from by this date? Tell me specifically, because you'll pay me any amount of money. Like if I said, hey, you know what? I will charge you $10,000. 6 months from now, though, you're going to have $50,000 in the bank, or else I'll double your 10. So you'll either have $50,000 in the bank, or I'll refund that 10 plus add 10 to it, and I'll give you 20. I'll get business, right? So the idea is like, okay, how do I, like, what's the problem that I solve? And getting very, very clear on that, and then offering a compelling and provocative solution. So that could maybe help speed things up for me. So anyway, those are just sort of top of mind thoughts. I don't know if I hit the mark on that at all.
Mark, I don't mind chiming in that too, because I love talking about contracting.
Go ahead, Danielle.
So I'll just turn this on my camera on briefly. Hey, I agree with that he just said. You got to find out that what your solution is going to be. But one of the things, in contracting, we do government contracting, and kind of that fast pass, in a sense, is through subcontracting. There's no easy or quick way, and I don't want anybody to have some false expectation that government contracting is easy. And if you set a goal to have a contract by next week and you snap your fingers, it's going to happen. It doesn't necessarily work that way. But one of the things that you can do if you have a very tight deadline is through, depending on your services, because this can vary too, between products and services, but through subcontracting. And one of the ways you can do that, of course, is building relationships with primes. But if you're on a tight deadline, how about you dig up some of the relationships that you currently have with prime contractors? So if it was my company or any other company that I am working with, I would definitely tell them, who do you already currently have a relationship or have worked with in the past, that maybe you haven't been in contact recently? Definitely reach out to them. Hey, we haven't talked in 6 months, or hey, we haven't talked in a year. I still do this, and reintroduce your company to those current already established relationships to see if they currently have work that you can be a part of through subcontracting, and kind of bypass that whole, finding the opportunity, responding through a proposal, waiting for them to get back to you, and then still you don't really know if you're going to win it or not. But if you reach out to those prime, they could have current contracts right now that they're looking to fill in positions. And you give them that call, and they're like, hey, I was just looking for that. I'm glad you called me. What it does is it kind of rekindles that relationship. So you do have a contract that they're thinking about going after or pursuing, that they can now consider your company for that contract. So that could be a way to kind of, get your foot back in the door, or get your foot in the door to start with, and hopefully help you meet your goals a little bit quicker. So hopefully that helped.
Could they be, so I'm just now getting my own business to the point to where I need to start doing contract work. And so I've been doing software development for 21 years. So I have a lot of experience. I've worked for NASA for 6 years. So, I mean, I'm a subject matter expert in a lot of areas. And so I also am an introvert and I'm quiet. And so going out and talking to people isn't exactly something that I comfortably do. But I mean, I'm fine doing it. But if I haven't done any prime work with anyone or even subcontract work with anyone, I just have contract experience and contacts at companies, but I don't know if there's any conflict in me reaching out to a company that maybe I worked for under a different contracting company before and trying to talk to them about my business. And so I don't know if that's something that's doable or if that's not something we should do, or.
I mean, that's, I can see how that can be a concern. However, you are independent contractor, what it sounds like, that you work for yourself. So if there's no conflict of interest, or if you didn't sign anything with that company, I don't see how that could be a problem. If you have a good relationship with that company, I'm not sure what the relationships are with the company that you work for. Maybe that could be a conversation. But if they understood that you're an independent contractor and you always work for yourself, and you want to work for another company, not necessarily as an employee, typically that's not an issue. But that's the nature of the beast in business, that we're going to work for multiple different companies. I mean, you work for yourself. As far as being an introvert, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm an introvert. I really, on a personal level, don't really like dealing with a whole lot of people. But one of the things in business, and forgive me, what was his name?
You went on mute, Danielle, and you told Professor Haynes, Chris? Yeah, Chris.
Yes, he touched on a really good, you can't be comfortable. If you stay comfortable, you're not going to grow. And if I chose to stay comfortable and not talk to people and not, critique my people skills, or not critique how I can start a conversation, I will be working for someone else right now. And so if you want to grow your business, one of the things you're going to have to do is, find ways to be comfortable, to build rapport with others. If it's starting out just through email, we can talk about different email techniques and how to use some of those soft skills to build relationships. But at some point, just to get your business going, you don't have to be everyone's best friend, but you do want to build some type of skill to be able to be comfortable enough to speak about your business, to grow. And you have a really good resume that you can use as your past performance. As soon as you said NASA, I was like, ooh, that struck my interest. So bringing your past performance in your resume to some of these larger companies can be very enticing, but they're not going to know what you can do if you don't present it to them. So.
I would add to that, Mark, the governments who are doing IT staff augmentation RFPs, you can watch the awards for those. And those companies, while they'll win those, they're constantly looking for the subcontractors to recommend, or for staffing related contracts. So watch the award and then contact the awardee.
And I'll just throw in on on Danielle's point, which I loved. And the introvert thing is something I could talk a lot about. So I'm just gonna add words, I think, just as a form of encouragement, because here's what I believe. I believe that what you perceive as a weakness is actually a real big strength, right? Extroverts who sell and they're good at it, but sometimes they make the mistake of talking the entire time. You don't have a need to talk. So you can let your NASA talk for you. Hey, you want the guy who did it for NASA? Here I am. Now, what's your problem? Where are your concerns? Where are you going? That kind of thing. So you feel like you don't have the need to talk, which in a lot of cases, makes the other people feel better about the interaction. So if I talk less during a meeting, people usually think it's a better meeting. Right, because they got to explore. They got to talk about their needs. Hey, here's my problem. Oh, wow, I think Mark really understands my problem, because he's a good listener, man. He asked me the right questions. I feel confident that he can provide me the service that I want because he talked less, but he seemed to understand more. So I just say that as a sort of a, again, sometimes we'll brand ourselves and say, well, I'm not good at this, or I'm this, and I do the same thing with the introvert thing. But I think that sometimes our perceived weaknesses, or I think an important question sometimes, hey, here's all the things that I think I'm weak at. So how do I make these into strengths? You know, well, another weakness, hey, I'm small. And maybe, you know, you say, hey, gosh, I'm a really real small. Like, it's hard for me to compete against bigger people. Say, great, that's awesome. So you know what, I will take no more than 5 clients at a time because I want to make sure I exceed your service. So absolutely, we're small, we're going to stay small because I take no more than 5 clients at a time because I want to be the person, when you make that call, I answer. You don't get in a call center when you deal with me. So again, what are my weaknesses? Now, let me turn those into strengths. You know, I think this, in a lot of cases, we should brag about our weaknesses. Well, you're small, you better believe I'm small. Of course I am, versus, well, I got strategic alliances. You know, I mean, we tend to, you know, I think we weaken what we exaggerate. I think we should go the reverse and say, look, just, you know, yes, there are some perceived weaknesses, but how are they strengths? And that's what I'm going to talk to.
Just want to keep everybody to ask questions. We provide these resources here for you. I know that you always mention how knowledgeable we are at Gov Directions, but the truth is we've learned it all from folks like you who come online and teach us. We just listen. Well, at the same time, you know, we can start wrapping up today. We're already at the 45-minute mark. So that's typically what we like to do with these sessions. And we're going to start closing it up if there are no more questions. So I want to thank Chris.
Hi, Mark.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, it's Audrey. I want to know, how do I connect with you directly?
With me directly?
Yes.
You can call. As you can see, I apologize. I usually am shaved and I'm not in a t-shirt, but I'm off. I went for a long walk today, so I'm not in the office this afternoon. But if you want to call 800-492-8523, then that will put you directly in, or you can actually schedule a time if you want a 20-minute consulting session at Gov Directions, just at the top of our page. Schedule a demo here, and I do those presentations for you, and we can talk for 20-30 minutes.
Okay, and just I'm writing it down. It's 800-492-8523, you said?
That's correct.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And I'm one of the 4 people. We're about 25 individuals total, but I'm one of the 4 people who answer the phone calls. So you're likely to hear my voice as you will Dale or Mike or Jamie. We're all working together. Okay.
Okay, sounds great.
So thank you everybody for coming, especially Danielle, again, hopping online with us. And if you have questions about certifications and teaming certificates, I really encourage you to watch this recording that I'm showing here, where you can come online and see the ones we've already done. And I didn't tell Danielle this, but she got probably about 10 different emails directly to us complimenting how excellent the last session was. So we are very grateful. And of course, Professor Hanks is here as usual, Wednesday afternoons at 4. Always an honor, and we are grateful that you help us out. And we'll actually meet this coming Monday again. And this is a focus session where we're really going to get into some details, contracting 101, capability statements, just refreshing what we've learned. But in this one, I'm going to actually talk about a proposal that I submitted that I didn't win. And I want to explain to you why I did not win that proposal. I think sometimes it's better to learn from our failures than it is to learn from our success. And I'm going to share that with you. And I always quote Einstein, where experience is the best teacher, and so I try to do that in this class. This really takes about 2 full hours. So if you join us at 3:30 on Monday, plan on sitting through that for the entire time. Everyone who sits through this generally likes it. Any final comments, Chris?
I don't think so. I was trying to think of a good way to sort of wrap this up, but and usually I try to do the encouraging wrap up, and I'm going to do the reverse today, which is probably not a good call, and I'm going to use the discouraging wrap up. As we grow, the questions get harder. not easier. And that may be a kind of a weird way to sort of wrap this up, but I just, you know, like when you were a teenager, you had some questions. You know, when you were in middle school, you had certain questions, but as you grow up, you know, sometimes the questions, they get harder and they get harder. And in the same way, in a similar way, in your business, the questions just get harder. And I think that, you know, just acknowledging that and saying, look, I'm going to sign up for the adventure. I'm going to sign up for the hard, but it's the hard that makes things great, not the easy. You know, so with that, just want to encourage you to sort of step out of that comfort zone and embrace the hard, and you'll be grateful that you did. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time and attention on this.
So everyone have a great afternoon, and we appreciate your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you.